I wanted the top of the table to be fairly thick, and I found these huge pieces of reclaimed hardwood in my timber stack, which I think is grey box. But to work out if I had enough for the table, I used CAD to lay out the pieces that would make up the top, and I had enough to make a 900mm diameter table by edge gluing 5 pieces together, each 180mm wide. I cut the 2 longer lengths in half, which gave me the 5 pieces, and then milled 1 flat face on each of them. This is probably the toughest cut I've done on this jointer, because this timber is as hard as steel, and the helical head had no problem with it. This timber is very heavy too. It was a bit of a workout building this table. After flattening 1 face on each, I then ran 1 edge over the jointer to get it flat and square, so I had 2 good reference surfaces for the table saw, where I then ripped each length to width. Sometimes I get comments when I wear gloves using the table saw or jointer about it being dangerous, and I'm fully aware of that. I only wear them when I'm handling reclaimed hardwood, because anyone who's done the same will know about the terrible splinters you get from it. These boards were about 75mm thick, so I resawed them to about 50mm, as I wanted the finished top to be 45mm thick. It took a few passes over the blade at different heights to get through these boards, first with a 10-inch blade and then a 12-inch blade. I didn't use the larger blade for all the cuts because it needs resharpening. I then ran all the pieces through the thicknesser to bring them down to final dimension and make them parallel. To get the flattest possible glue up of the top, my last step was to prepare the glue edges by clamping each pair of boards that were being glued together with their top face facing each other and the glue edge facing down. Then by running them over the jointer together, any error in the angle of the fence is cancelled out and the boards should remain dead flat. Then it was time for glue up, which went very well, so I'll leave you with this relaxing montage. I left the top to dry overnight and returned the next day to clean up the glue squeeze out on the underside of the top, ready to start cutting the circle with my circle cutting jig I made for the recent Wood Jigs 21 challenge. I marked a center point on the top, but before committing to it, I checked that my 450mm radius from that point was still inside those stepped areas where the outside boards are a little shorter. All good, so I drilled a shallow hole for the guide pin of the jig and set it up for its very first use. Those of you with a keen eye will see that I'm doing what some of you would consider a climb cut here. The reason why I'm cutting in this direction is because this is the first time using the jig and I didn't know how that locking screw was going to hold up. Cutting in this direction means the force applied from the router bit is pushing the router away from the center of the top rather than towards it. So if that locking screw were to come loose, the router would cut into the waste part of the top and not the good part. The climb cut worked out fine because for most of the cut, while the bit was in the groove, it was supported on both sides, so it wasn't trying to run away from me. That only happened when it exited the groove. I only had a straight bit to cut this groove, and although it was doing fine, it was struggling a little, so I thought I would cut the rest of the waste off with the jigsaw and then use a bigger flush trim bit to finish the edge. Unfortunately, my jigsaw wasn't up to the task and the blade wandered into the edge, which meant I ended up recutting the table anyway. Oh well, no point getting cranky about it. I recut the edge using the router to do all of it this time, and the finished dimension was 885mm. I then sanded the edge to finish it off and filled a few small holes in the top with Starbond medium thick CA glue. Up until now I was still concerned about finding some very similar timber for the base, but once I'd resawed the pieces for the top, I realised I had enough offcuts that I could rip them in half and laminate two together to give me all the pieces I needed for the base. These next few steps don't need any explanation from me, so I'll just let you enjoy some workshop sounds. I then glued together each pair of leg blanks. I left them to set up overnight and then cleaned off the glue squeeze out before running the edges over the jointer to get them flat and square. I then cut all the pieces to length, which was 2 cross pieces and 4 uprights. The horizontal pieces of the base are joined together using a half lap joint, which I cut on the table saw and then cleaned up on the router table. The 4 legs of the base are joined to the cross piece with dowels, and I'm using the 1/2 inch drill guide attachment here in the dowel max and using a spacer from my reference edge to orient the dowel holes in the center of the piece. and then use the same spacer from the reference edge on the uprights to drill the corresponding holes. Time for a test fit before glue up. Perfect every time. I made another cross piece off camera which will sit at the top of the base directly under the tabletop, and this is how the two will get fixed together. I glued the base together in 2 stages to make it easier, and in this shot here, the base is upside down. The tabletop had quite a few small surface cracks on the underside that extended to the edges, which I filled with epoxy so the edge was smooth to touch. Because this was the underside, I only used the epoxy towards the edge, as this side won't be seen, and it made sanding a lot easier. Once the epoxy had set and was sanded, I installed the threaded inserts for the base to attach to. Because this is tough old hardwood, I installed the inserts using a screw and nut rather than an Allen key because they can strip out easily if you need to apply a lot of force. Time to apply a finish to the table, which was Cabot's CFP floor. It's a very tough and very smooth water-based poly. You should always filter or strain your finish before using it, particularly when spraying. As always, thanks for watching.